This is Mike Rubino, and you are listening to the John Fredericks Show, where Virginia comes to talk. I'm filling in for John today, and I have Carl Higbee joining me. Carl is a former Navy SEAL, frequent cable news contributor, and an author. His book, Enemies, Both Foreign and Domestic, is an excellent book. I'm glad to have Carl here because Carl is very tuned into the Trump presidency. He's obviously going to be a big part of Trump 2020. So I wanted to talk to Carl about everything from things we have going on abroad with ISIS to things going on in D.C. healthcare. Thanks for joining me, Carl.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike.
So, Carl, what do you think about everything going on in the Senate right now? I mean, these senators have completely and totally let down the American people, and I think that they've let down the president. I mean, what do you think about all of this?
Well, I tell you, I wrote, I was and quoted in a piece in The Hill this week, but I said it's time to start primarying some of these roadblock Republicans, and it's a little controversial, but
I don't think it's controversial at all.
Well, I mean, by a lot of people's measure, I get a lot of pushback on it. But the issue is people like Paul Ryan, who has never been on our side. You have people like Mitch McConnell, who are not getting the job done. And quite frankly, if you're in the private sector, I mean, I understand that most of these are career bureaucrats. If you're in the private sector and you don't get the job done, you get pushed out.
Correct. If you don't do the things that you're elected to do, that you're supposed to do, that is in your job description, and I believe if you campaign on repealing and replacing Obamacare for 8 years, that you should pretty much get that done immediately.
Well, why is it day one? 7 years they had to figure this stuff out with almost unlimited resources in the House and Senate. They didn't have a plan day one. They also voted to repeal health care 62 times under Obama. Why don't you vote on the exact same bill now? But they don't, because it doesn't matter, because it'll count now, and now they won't want it laid at their feet.
Correct, and I think that Republicans in the Senate, and definitely in the House as well, bar a couple of members, we have a hard time messaging. The president's so good at messaging because he takes straight to Twitter and he speaks directly to the American people. For some reason, Republicans in D.C. have this reticence to communicate with the American people, actually say what's on their mind, to say how they will help them. And this is a problem that is pervasive in D.C. because they're all just concerned about their next election. Now, my question to you is, if you want to primary members, which you wrote about in The Hill, who do you want to primary? Give me 3 names. Give our listeners 3 names of people that you'd like to primary.
Well, I can tell you right now, top of my list is Paul Ryan. I supported Nellen, who ran against him during the primary of the last election cycle, because I think that he's just not doing his job. I mean, there's a number of Democrats I think they got to go too, that I think that we're going to pick up. But also, I like the Mike Lees and the Ted Cruzes and the Rand Pauls. They have their merits, they have their points, but they need to get in line. I don't necessarily want to primary them, but they add value in the sense that they keep a lot of people in the Senate honest. But people who are waffling on this, that don't want to support it. And the big thing here too that I want to bring up, which nobody's really talking about, is there was health care before Obamacare.
Correct.
So if you just flat out repeal it, the answer here is not more government, it's less government. So if you just flat out repeal this, make it competitive across state lines, deregulate the industry, and I don't know, maybe make healthcare expenses tax deductible, the insurance premiums will hit the floor.
Absolutely.
I don't even know a lot about healthcare, and I can figure this out.
But now, what you do know a lot about is our military, and you wrote this excellent piece on FoxNews.com. And you basically say that bureaucratic zombies are ruining our military. We must pivot now. I read this piece, and I was absolutely blown away by your take. And I think that this, the bureaucracy that you're speaking about is the same bureaucracy that we're talking about in D.C. But why don't you explain to our listeners what exactly you're writing about here?
So, obviously I had 9 years in the military, and, I'm very passionate about this. I love the military. I love our country. And the problem with the military, and the article that I basically inspired me to write this was called "Why Our Best Officers Are Leaving." It was written in the Atlantic, and it is. I mean, it's a 15-page article, and he goes around and interviews all these officers that have left the military, and most of them are big shot CEOs and doing big things now. And they said, "Why do you leave the military?" It's not a meritocracy. They said, "Look, I'm with the risk of sounding pompous, they said, we're better than the other people that are staying around. The career officers stay there in large part because they can't go anywhere else, and they become these bureaucratic zombies and the rulers of laws rather than leaders of men. And it really is crushing us. I mean, like when we were in World War II, we were known, I mean, like we out-innovated everybody. That's what we did. I mean, it came down, we out-innovated the nuclear weapon. We out-innovated things in the field. We out-innovated. That's how we won. Sure, we were a fighting force to be reckoned with, but our innovation overcame our opposition's numbers. And that's what we lack today because they don't want to think outside the box. I think Secretary Mattis is uniquely suited to fix this problem. I think President Trump has given Mattis the authority to go out and do this. And I think we are on a path, but
and
that's
you know what
where
I
we
love
are today
about Secretary Mattis? He's not telegraphing his past. I think that the Obama presidency, they were cutting funding, they were decreasing manning, they were, as you put it, eviscerating morale. But what Secretary Mattis is doing, he's keeping everything close to the vest. And if you read these stories, you can glean them out basically almost every day, if not every other day, where he's absolutely dismantling ISIS. I mean, on a day-in, day-out basis, you can read these one-off stories where this ISIS leader was killed, this leader was killed. He's going about and he's absolutely annihilating the enemy. And I think that that's exactly what the president ran on. I mean, you know his national security platform better than anybody, but he always told his supporters, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do. I don't know why we always say, we're going to go bomb here, and then we go and bomb there.
and nobody killed and we destroy a bunch of buildings. I love it. And, to be honest, like, I don't need to know the strategy. I need to know that my family's safe here at home. That's what I care about. And of course, you have the left-wing media who just would love to hit him on that. Be like, he doesn't have a plan because he's not telling us why. Because the all-knowing media doesn't have a copy of it.
Right?
Absolutely not.
That you couldn't be more correct. I think that it's very important for both the listeners here, but people just across the country should they should be tuning into people like you, because you provide a unique perspective from both a Trump angle, but then also a military lens, right? You served 9 years in the military. You were a Navy SEAL. You've seen all of this live in action. I know the president absolutely adores you. I guess my final thing before we move on to Governor Jim Gilmore, I'd love to know what you think about the whole Russia scandal. I know. I'm kind of teeing you up. That's a softball. Knock it out of the park for me.
I tell you, I watch these White House briefings, and I see this question get asked like 2 out of 3 times. 2 out of 3 questions are about this. If I were the White House press corps, and I think Sarah Huckabee is awesome. I think Sean Spicer is doing a great job. I think he's
those two are just the best.
They need to just stand up there and say, I'm answering no more questions about Russia. And if they ask more, you end the press conference and you say, when you have some charges, come back and talk to me about it. Then we'll have something to discuss. But when it's allegations, no.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I mean, the whole thing just reeks of witch hunt. I mean, it's hyper-partisan politics at its worst. And
show me the money.
And they haven't been able to yet. I mean, this is months and months and months. Supposedly this administration's mired in controversy. None of it sticks, and none of it sticks to the principle. The president's doing an absolutely phenomenal job. You and I both know that. You communicate that every day on TV. I think that it's up to us now, to explain why he's doing so well, and you did an excellent job doing that. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Absolutely.